Hello, welcome to another inspiring episode of Amazons in Battle, the show where we celebrate the incredible women making waves and breaking barriers across Nigeria and beyond. My name is Martia Umar, and today on the show, Amazons in Battle on EFCC Radio 97.3 FM, we are truly honored to have a powerful guest in the studio with us. Every week on Amazons in Battle, we've been highlighting amazing women who are not only achieving greatness, but are also paving the way for others to follow. These are the women who are shaping the future, and today we're thrilled to shine the spotlight on one of such women. Our guest today is Gladys Emmanuel, an award-winning human rights activist, a passionate legal practitioner, and the advocacy officer for Tabita Empowerment Center, Abuja. Gladys has dedicated her life to fighting for justice and empowering the voiceless, and we are excited to hear her story and learn from her wealth of experience. Thank you so much for joining us, Gladys Emmanuel.
Thank you so much, my dear.
So it's been a long time coming, like your work is just everywhere, it's glaring. But tell us more about you though.
All right. So I am a human rights lawyer, gender advocate. I started off full-time community work early parts of 2017. I started off as volunteering with non-profit organizations that are targeted at advancing the rights of women. But I have a background in law. From University of Jos, Nigerian Law School, Kano campus, and then I went further to earn a human rights law master's degree from Cardiff University, Wales, the United Kingdom. Currently, I serve at Tabita Empowerment Center, a non-governmental not-for-profit organization headquartered in Abuja, but with volunteering units in Plateau State and Kaduna State, and the core of our work is targeted at eliminating domestic violence through advocacy, targeting individuals and communities, provision of psychosocial support for victims or survivors of domestic violence. Equally, we embark on sensitization programs, and we provide developmental support for widows and educational assistance for indigent children.
All right, how did you start all of this? Because being a gender activist, being a lawyer at the same time, in the civil society space, it's a lot of work. And like they say, Rome was not built in a day.
Definitely.
How did you get into this space?
All right. So growing up, actually, most people look back at my time growing up and look at me now, and they are very shocked at how much I've transformed over the years. So growing up, I used to be that child who didn't used to speak much. I would rather do lots of writings, lots of readings than speaking much. But one thing I noticed around me was injustice to women, injustice to girls. I just wasn't sure how exactly to go about it, but I knew that this was wrong and we had to put a stop to it. This led to me picking up, of course, a course in law. After studying, I felt like it wasn't enough, although my undergraduate thesis was hinged on domestic violence, and gender inequality, but I knew that there was more for me to study to be able to give back to society in the measure that I wanted to. And this now fueled my desire to look at human rights, but specifically now my research was based on women's rights, especially in Nigeria.
Okay.
We are a dynamic society, we are ethnically diverse society, and of course there's a need for balance. And so through that research, I was able to get to know a lot of things, a lot of gaps, whether it's in our legislature or legislation, whether it's cultural practices, or whether it's even with interpersonal relationship that individuals have with one another, or even within the family unit, as little as a family unit. It became very clear to me that issues of domestic violence or gender-based violence actually starts from the home, and then it snowballs into what we see in the wider society. So this were my inspiration, and I've always had supportive networks, whether it's networks of friends, network of family members, or even mentors, and this has really kept me going.
Okay, so a lot has happened in Nigeria when you talk about domestic violence, gender-based violence, human rights.
Yes.
Specifically, a lot has happened. And now there are a lot of challenges to be tackled in this aspect of our lives, which we struggle. People like you partnered with different organizations to bring some of these to the forefront.
Sure.
How has this journey been so far?
Okay. For me, it's been a learning curve. Every day is a new chapter for me. Just when you think you've seen it all, something else happens and you're like, no.
Did this really happen?
Yes, I didn't really see this coming. So I always tell people, I say, although I did a course in a program in human rights law, a master's program, looked at the international perspective. Then, of course, I also looked at the domestic now, which is, I looked at some parts of England, and then I looked at some parts of Nigeria, because Nigeria borrowed this legal system from the UK. But one thing that this journey has shown me is we're very different. Our attitude to issues of women's rights, issues of human rights, is very different from what you see out there. It's quite unfortunate that you see not many people are very aware that there's even something known as human rights violation. For those of us in urban society or urban communities now, we might say, we are aware that when there is a breach to maybe your freedom of speech, you can sue. But people at the grassroots, they're not even aware that there's a part of the Constitution that embodies fundamental human rights. They're not even aware, for instance, that Nigeria is a signatory to various international human rights legal instruments. They're not even aware that there is something called the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, of which Nigeria is a signatory to, but Nigeria has failed time and time again to actually domesticate. Some are not even aware there's something called the VAP Act or the VAP laws in various parts of the country. So for me, this journey has shown me that there is need for more work to make people know, because when someone is aware, abuse is minimized or completely eliminated. 2 weeks ago, I was at the beginning of the 16 days of activism. I was actually in a community, and part of the conversation, we designed a scorecard just to find out the current state of that community as to what exactly do they know when it comes to issues of violence against women and girls, and what is the community investing towards tackling this issue. And it will amaze you that out of 50 persons who were sitting, not more than 10 were able to tell me they are aware of issues of violence against women and girls. In fact, just 2 of them were able to acknowledge that they are aware there's something called the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. So tell me, in such a community, it means that issues of human rights violation would have a field day. Perpetrators will walk the streets freely, and even the victims themselves, or survivors, would not even be aware that their rights are being violated. So it's a learning curve for me every day, and the need to ensure that victims get support, they get even the aftercare, not only access to justice now, medical care, they also get that trauma-informed care, is one of the driving force for me, even in the work that I do.
Interesting. That's a whole lot of experience to get into a community and they know little or nothing about
Exactly.
gender-based violence or even violence against persons. That's a whole lot. So where are we with this fight in Nigeria? Violence against persons, human rights, abuses and all of that. Have we made significant progress?
So I got asked the same question yesterday, and I would say Nigeria scores fairly. It could be better. There is more we can do to be better towards promoting, towards advancing the rights, not just only the rights of women now, but even the rights of men and boys.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell us to go about enacting new laws. No. We have the Constitution, we have the VAP Act, we have the Child's Rights Act, we have so many other laws, too many actually. Our major issue is implementation. Nigeria right now struggles a lot with implementation and proper enforcement. So we see that maybe the court has given a ruling or has given a judgment, but then it takes a while for enforcement to take place. This indirectly emboldens perpetrators because they see that the work towards fully accessing justice is a lengthy work. This in turn would deter victims who have suffered some form of abuse to seek legal redress, because they will tell you, it would take me almost 5 years. It would take me almost 4 years. So what's the use? I'd rather keep quiet. And in that 4 years, this person might go through stigmatization or labeling, or
they might be ostracized.
Exactly. And as such, they'll tell you there's really no need for me to do that. We still have communities till tomorrow that utilize banishment as a form of addressing issues of violence against women and girls. Till tomorrow, they still use banishment. They banish the perpetrator.
I thought we've gone past that.
No, we haven't. I actually thought we have, but we haven't. I got a report last week that there was a case of incest, and then the tool utilized by the community was banishment. So the thing is this: you banish a perpetrator, you embolden him, he or she moves into another community, and they continue to perpetrate the same issue.
So what would you rather advise in such situations? Because I know it's a lot of scenarios playing out at the same time.
Yes. In this instance, incest is an offense, is one of the offense captured under the VAP Act, and the appropriate thing to do is to escalate to the authorities, either to the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons or the Nigerian police, and afterwards this case would of course go to court, considering the fact that the victim in this scenario is below the ages of 18.
So what is incest?
Incest is a process whereby persons of close relation engage in sexual intercourse. Okay. So in this particular case, it was the case of a father and a daughter. This happened in the EFCC.
These are the things that you ask when you hear stories like this.
Exactly.
Now, there are a lot of challenges that you face, and at some point you have to partner with other organizations to realize or see the result or the end point, how this case is being tackled at the end of the. So what are some of these organizations that you've partnered with?
All right, so I'm very glad that you mentioned partnership, because when you're addressing issues of social justice or human rights, you can't operate in silos. So our number one partner is the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP. We currently have partnership with them at the headquarters in Abuja, and then at the Plateau State zone, and also the zone in Kaduna State. Then we partner with International Federation of Women Lawyers Nigeria, which is FIDA Nigeria, and also the Abuja branch and the branches at Kaduna and Plateau State. Then we have some other civil society organizations that we equally work with. There's Cheche Yara Child Advocacy Center. There is the Association of the Wives of FCT Traditional Rulers, because they help to facilitate the buy-in.
Okay.
Then also we utilize our memberships with networks such as NACTAL, which is the Network Against Child Trafficking, Abuse and Labor. We equally utilize our networks as part of the FCT, that's Federal Capital Territory, First Responders, SGBV, that's Sexual and Gender-Based Violence First Responders. So on that particular network, you have a wide array of partners. Partners that provide different services, whether it's psychosocial support, legal aid, whether it's medical aid, whether it's even shelters, which is most important in cases of violence against women and girls. So in a nutshell, these are some of the networks or partners that we work with.
All right. I know that you've had a lot of, situations to deal with. A lot of reports, a lot of advocacy. There's so much to do when you talk about human rights, social justice, and gender-based violence. Now, which of these situations or cases that you've taken that has really shook you, and how did it turn out at the end of the day? How were you able to tackle the issue at the end of the day?
Okay, so we've handled a lot, but one that comes to mind is one that I handled in 2022. In fact, it started off in 2021 and we concluded in 2022. This case had a mix of everything. It had a mix of abandonment by spouse without sustenance. It had domestic violence. It had threats to life. It had issues of theft. It had lack of welfare for children. it was a lot of everything. In fact, the victim had 4 kids with her husband, and at some point he became very abusive. Now, the abuse now started to extend to the first child. It was at that point she decided to speak up, because then she gets back. She was a petty trader as at then. She used to hawk bean pudding, which we know locally as moi moi.
Moi moi,
She used
yes.
to hawk it in a wheelbarrow. In fact, at that point, the wheelbarrow was rented. So at the end of the day, she sells maybe about a measure, a mudu of beans. She gets maybe 20 plates of moi moi. Then it was 100 naira per plate. When she does her take home and stock, sometimes there's even nothing left. But she kept pushing and using this means to see her kids through school. But when she comes back from her shop every day, she notices that there are stripes on her daughter's body. Her daughter complains of body aches, and just when she decided to probe further, she discovered that the husband was actually physically abusing the daughter. So now it moved from a point of abusing the mother to abusing the daughter. At this point, she decided to seek help. She reached out to our organization. When she came in herself, she wasn't free from stripes. She also had physical injuries. So the first thing we did was we took, with their consent, of course, we took pictures of those injuries, and then we escalated to NAPTIP. While NAPTIP was working on this, threats to life started to come in. At that point, we had to visit the nearest police station to cater to this. Although this was not as productive as we would have expected, but with NAPTIP, they got the perpetrator in. They detained him for a while. When he got out of detention, it became worse. In fact, at that point, he packed his entire properties. In his words, if she's bold enough to report him to the authorities and they detain him, then he has nothing, or he doesn't want to have anything to do with her. So at that point, he actually abandoned her and the kids, and he left the house. Coincidentally, that was the same time the rent had expired, so the landlord kicked them out of the apartment. Herself and her kids had to stay in like a little, they call it bacha, for a few days. This was raining season. When she reached out again, we knew that while we were still undertaking investigation and every other thing, we needed to provide them with shelter. So what we did was we reached out to another partnering organization, Dorothy Njemanzi Foundation, and through that organization, they provided, they paid for an apartment actually for her and the children. While they were there, she said she didn't want the marriage anymore. They contracted this marriage under the Igbo traditional law and customs, so we had to dissolve it that way. So we proceeded to customary court, tendered all the necessary evidence to prove that these people were married. He refused legal representation, and then the court dissolved the marriage. Now it was the battle for custody, which she was afraid of, considering that she was just pushing the wheelbarrow. But again, we had to establish that he abandoned the kids for a period of time. He moved in with his sibling and they did not care. But this woman, never for a moment did she abandon the children. After so much back and forth, full custody was awarded to her, and then he was asked to provide maintenance every month for the upkeep of the kids. Now, towards the latter end of 2022, our organization, Tabitha Empowerment Center, kicked off an initiative we know as Empower Her Initiative. So she became one of the beneficiaries. We provided training for her on financial literacy, after which we empowered her with some little seed capital. She started off a business. At this point, she no longer pushes the wheelbarrow. She now sells foods in coolers, and in fact travels around the country to cook for occasions. She's very comfortable now. Her kids are doing well. In fact, the first daughter, who as at then was in GSS 3, is about to get into the university.
That was a lot. Because like you said, it has traces of everything.
Yes.
That has to do with violence in it, and it took you a whole year to fight this.
We actually had to provide psychosocial support too for her, because she wasn't in a good space mentally when she approached us.
All right. We need more of you in this country. Honestly, we do need more of you. At this point, we'll continue the conversation, but let's take a breather. Don't go anywhere as we continue our conversation with Gladys Emmanuel, a true Amazon who's making a difference in Nigeria.
Hey, what are you trying to do? Don't touch that dial. That is 97.3 EFCC radio. Let me have your attention. If you want to listen to a radio station, best the news all around information, local and international. Our programs educative, interactive, informative. Calling, we are active. 97.3 EFCC radio. 97.3 Voices against economic crimes. 97.3 Voices against financial crimes. 97.3 EFCC radio. 97.3 in your office, just tune in. 97.3 even in traffic, just tune in. 97.3 97.3
It's good to know you're still there. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in to EFCC Radio 97.3 FM, Voices Against Economic and Financial Crimes, you are listening to Amazons in Battle, where we celebrate the bold, courageous and trailblazing women of Nigeria. Today, we're speaking with Gladys Emmanuel, an award-winning human rights activist and the advocacy officer for Tabita Empowerment Center Abuja. We've been talking about the incredible work she's been doing and how she's fighting for justice and empowerment. Gladys, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, and we've had some very wonderful conversation earlier. Let's get back into it. Tell us about how Tabita Empowerment Foundation has been able to help other people stay away from corruption, because we know the psychological toll this abuse have on people. Some people didn't get to see the end of their troubles, just like that woman, and they turn into something else. Now at EFCC Radio, or EFCC at the Commission, we're actually pushing for people to have this positive attitudinal change, for people to stay away from corruption, any form of corruption, as much as they can. And acts like this can push people into corruption. Exactly. So how have you been able to make sure that that doesn't happen to people that you have worked with or come across in the line of your work?
All right. So working with victims, various victims or survivors at Tabita Empowerment Center, they present various attitudes. Some are calm, some are aggressive because of the trauma they've been through. Some are indifferent. 1 minute they come in and tell you, I want to move forward. The next minute you get a call saying, I want to withdraw the case.
Wow.
I'm not willing to proceed.
That's a challenge that
Yes.
you have to deal with at every point in
Yes.
time, right? For most
Yes.
cases.
Yes. So one thing we understand is sometimes these attitudes come from a place of the absence of awareness of the severity of issues of gender-based violence, or violence against women and girls. So what we do is we embark on massive sensitization. So we do general community-based sensitization. Then we also have community stakeholders dialogues. And then we also have sensitizations in little groups. Because in as much as you're addressing everybody, but that might not be able to meet the needs of the various groups. So we have sensitization sometimes targeted at the young people. Then we have the ones targeted at the women, the ones targeted at the traditional gatekeepers and the men. That way we're able to get the various perspectives of these people. Additionally, we make them understand that combating this is a collective responsibility. It is not the responsibility of the government alone or Tabita Empowerment Center. So we need to join hands together and make things work. We also do not just embark on initiatives without securing the buy-in of traditional gatekeepers. It's very important. So we make them understand that this is our project. It is not Tabita's project alone. It's not the government's project alone. It is our project. And you see, they become very involved. But additionally, we equally train people we call the anti-gender-based violence community champions. Now, these champions comprise women, girls, boys, men, and even survivors of gender-based violence themselves. So they see themselves as empowered. They see themselves as change makers. And they swing into action, moving to protect their various communities. We have them in about 5 communities in the FCT, and they've been doing a tremendous work.
Interesting. So I need to ask this question. What can we do? There are people who want to join the cause in advocating for women, fighting against gender-based violence, and also charting a new path for the youth of the country to stay away from corruption and be better version of themselves. What's your 2 cents to that?
Okay, issues of social justice is a worthy cause first. So, I mean, if you're thinking about that, then yes, you are thinking on the right thoughts. But again, you need to also be very clear as to what part of social justice you want to advocate for. Social justice is broad. We have gender-based violence, we have issues of labor, maternity, and also once you're sure as to what exactly, then you move on to developing your capacity on that particular issue. So you could do this through attending workshops, seminars, or volunteering, or even getting a mentor. These things do not cost so much, and you could start off your advocacy even from your community. I started to address people from very little clusters back then in school, and it snowballed into this. So you could start off from whether it's your university, from your community, from your religious assembly, dependent, but ensure that your capacity is built, because there are times when the journey becomes rocky. So it's that passion and desire you have to make a change that keeps you going. But most importantly, ensure that you map out your goals as you stride along. So in my first 2 years, what do I want to accomplish? In my 10 years, how far do I want to go on this journey of advocacy and just ensuring a change in my community? Utilize your intellect, your inner strength into ventures that are more productive for the common good of humanity.
All right, thank you very much. I forgot to mention that you are an award-winning activist. International recognition.
Yes, I got the most recent is from the Humanitarian Awards Global in Accra, Ghana. And then from the UK too.
See, it's been an insightful conversation. I don't even know how to quantify, but it's been an insightful conversation. Thank you so much for being here on EFCC
Thank
Radio.
You too for the opportunity to.
And there you have it, another powerful episode of Amazons in Battle, celebrating the incredible impact of women like Gladys Emmanuel, who are changing the world for the better. Before we sign off, we want to hear from you. Yes, we want to hear from you, our amazing listener. You know other incredible women in your community who deserve to be featured on this show? Beautiful. All you have to do is send your names, stories, or recommendations. We want to continue to celebrate these amazing Amazons across Nigeria. Reach out to us via text message at 07017678108. That is 07017678108. Until next time, keep battling for greatness, keep fighting for justice, and keep lifting one another up. My name is Martia Umar. Bye for now.